There are moments that split your life in two. The person you were before and the person left standing after. For me, that moment came on an ordinary Tuesday night, sitting on the edge of a bathtub, staring at a little plastic test in my shaking hand. I didn't know it then, but that small blue mark was the beginning of everything. The strange dream, the house that breathed, the thing that wore my husband's face. My name is Elena, and if I'm being honest with you, completely honest, I'm still not sure how much of what happened to us was fate, how much was something older and far more deliberate, and how much was simply the universe deciding that my daughter was worth fighting over. What I do know is this: we moved into a house called Hallow House in a dead town called Harrow's Landing, and within 48 hours, something walked through our front door that has never, not once in the months since, let us fully go. This is what happened to us. This is what's still happening. Honestly, if I had to pinpoint the exact moment my life broke open at the seams, I'd go back to the night I found out I was going to be a mother. Marcus and I weren't anything serious at that point. We'd only been seeing each other for a few months. Two adults in their late 20s who'd found something comfortable and warm in each other without putting a label on it. Neither of us was in any rush to complicate things. Life had a way of doing that for you. I noticed I was late on a Tuesday. Didn't think much of it at first. Stress does strange things to your body, and things had been stressful at work, but something in the back of my mind kept quietly pressing, like a fingertip against a bruise. So I stopped at the pharmacy on my way home, bought a test, and sat on the edge of my bathtub, waiting for a result that I kept telling myself would be negative. It wasn't negative. I put the test down on the sink, walked to my living room, sat on the couch, and didn't move for a very long time. I wasn't sad exactly. I wasn't happy either. I was something more like suspended, hovering between two versions of my future, unsure which one was actually mine. I didn't tell Marcus right away. I needed to sit with it myself first and to figure out what I actually wanted before I started navigating what he might want. My family would have had opinions, my mother especially. She would have called it a blessing and immediately started planning a baby shower. My father would have quietly put his hand on my shoulder and told me whatever I decided, they were with me. But both of them had been gone for 7 years by then, taken in a car accident on an icy January road, and so I was alone with it. I finally agreed to meet Marcus for dinner about a week later. We went to a small jazz bar we both liked. Low lights, good drinks, the kind of place where loud conversation feels natural. I nursed a club soda all night and told myself I was just going to enjoy the evening, that I'd find the right moment to tell him. I never got the chance to choose the moment. The moment chose me. On the drive home, I fell asleep in the passenger seat, and that's when I had the dream. It wasn't like any dream I'd had before. I was completely paralyzed. Not in the way you sometimes are when you're half asleep and your body hasn't caught up with your mind, but fully, profoundly still, as if I'd been carved from stone. There were lights above me, white and blinding, the kind that forced their way through your eyelids. I couldn't turn my head. I couldn't make a sound. I could feel my heart slamming against my ribs. And then my father walked into view. I knew immediately it was a dream. You can't argue with that kind of certainty. The man had been buried in St. Catherine's Cemetery for 7 years, but knowing didn't make it feel any less real. His face looked exactly the way I remembered it. The strong jaw, the deep-set eyes, the slight curve of his mouth that meant he was about to say something serious. He spoke quietly, but every word landed with weight. He told me my child was going to be different in ways I couldn't understand yet. He talked about light. Light in dark places. Light that holds things back. He said something about changes that had already been made. Deep and necessary ones. Then he leaned forward and kissed my forehead and apologized for what came next. I noticed the machine when it started moving. I don't have a better word for it. It looked nothing like any equipment I'd ever seen. All strange angles and soft humming. What it did to me I won't describe in detail, because I've spent years trying to forget it. The pain was extraordinary, the kind that doesn't come from one place but from everywhere, all at once, as if every nerve in your body has been taught to scream simultaneously. My mother appeared partway through, stepping into my line of sight from somewhere just outside it. She was holding something. A long syringe, the needle absurdly large, like something from a nightmare's parody of a doctor's office. She didn't hesitate. She pushed the needle into my stomach and pressed the plunger, and whatever was in it hit my insides like ice water poured directly into my veins. The burning shifted, became something else, something colder and somehow even worse. The lights got brighter and brighter. I thought I was going to be blind. Then I woke up. It took me a second to realize why the lights from the dream were still there and why they were moving. Marcus had drifted at the wheel. We were in the wrong lane and there was a semi coming straight at us, its headlights flooding the car, the driver leaning on his horn. I screamed. Marcus yanked the wheel and we missed the truck by what felt like inches. He pulled over and we both sat there shaking. Neither of us said anything for a while. Then I told him everything. The pregnancy, the week of silence, all of it, spilled out into the dark car with the rain starting up around us, pattering soft against the roof. I didn't plan it. I just couldn't hold it anymore. Marcus didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he put his arms around me and held me while I cried into his shoulder. He told me we were going to figure it out, that we were in it together. He said it quietly and without drama, which was exactly what I needed. Somewhere along the way, I started to think that maybe this was all going to be okay. Things moved fast after that. I asked Marcus to marry me. Not because there was pressure to, but because somewhere in that rainy night, I'd realized I trusted him more than I'd trusted anyone in a long time. He laughed when I asked, surprised in the best way. And then he said yes. Our wedding was a small thing, a judge, 2 witnesses who were barely more than acquaintances, and the 2 of us. I wore a blue dress. Marcus forgot to bring the rings to the courthouse and had to drive back for them. We were both laughing by the time we actually exchanged them. It was imperfect in every way and exactly right. The years after that were good ones. Marcus was patient, funny, and quietly devoted. The kind of person who shows love through action rather than declaration. Our daughter Nora was born 8 months after the wedding. From almost the moment she started talking, it was clear she was something else. Not in any way you could easily explain to someone else. Just that her observations were too precise, her attention too focused, her understanding of unspoken things a little too accurate for her age. She would sometimes say things that stopped you in the middle of whatever you were doing just to look at her. I thought back to my dreams sometimes, about what my father had said to me, about light in dark places. For 6 years, we were an ordinary family. And then, about a year ago, the ordinary part ended. Marcus lost his job. The company he'd worked for, a mid-size pharmaceutical contractor, collapsed suddenly after a federal investigation uncovered what sounded, when Marcus described the rumors, like something out of a thriller. Illegal human trials, missing persons, financial crimes layered over worse ones. He didn't know the details. He just knew that one day he had a job and the next he didn't, and that no one was going to hire someone whose last employer was now synonymous with a federal scandal. Months went by, the savings thinned. I picked up extra shifts waitressing, but it wasn't enough. Nora started first grade that autumn, which helped free up my hours, but the bills didn't care about that. We didn't have family to lean on. We didn't have savings left to speak of. We were running out of road. I was sitting at the kitchen table one evening, sorting through bills and trying to decide which ones we could delay, when the phone rang. The man said his name was Colt. He was calling from HR at Marcus's former employer. What remained of the company's administrative side was attempting to place affected employees in new positions as part of a settlement agreement. They had a caretaker position available. It would require relocation, but the pay was solid, housing was included, and they needed someone to start immediately. Would Marcus be interested? I know how it looks in hindsight. I know I should have asked more questions. But when you're drowning, you don't analyze the rope. You grab it. Marcus said yes before Colt had finished the sentence. The town was called Harrow's Landing. I'd never heard of it. It sat about 200 miles from where we'd spent our whole lives. A mid-sized town that felt, driving in for the first time as the sun was going down, much smaller than its population should have made it. The main street was wide and quiet in the wrong way. Not peaceful, but emptied out. Old commercial buildings with dark windows, a diner with a flickering sign, a few people walking with their heads down. We turned onto Ashford Road and found the house. It was large, 2 stories, set back from the street behind a tall wrought iron fence. The path from the gate to the front steps was cracked and edged with overgrowth. The siding was faded and peeling in long curling strips. Some of the upper windows were dark. Others caught the last of the evening light in a way that made them look almost like open eyes. We stood at the gate for a long moment, the 3 of us, just looking. "Well," Marcus said, with the particular dry tone he used to make hard things sound manageable, "I've got my work cut out for me." I looked down at Nora. She was staring at the house with an expression I didn't usually see on a 6-year-old, fixed and serious and very still. "Hey," I said softly, "you okay?" She didn't answer right away. When she did, she didn't look at me. "Something bad happened there," she said. "I can feel it, like it's still in the walls." I crouched down beside her. "I know it looks a little scary. It's just old, that's all. Old things always feel a bit strange." She finally turned to look at me, and her expression was one I recognized. The slight frown she got when she decided not to argue with something she knew was wrong. "There's a woman standing in the upstairs window," she said quietly. "She's been watching us since we got out of the car." I looked up sharply. The windows were empty. Every single one. "I don't see anyone, honey." "She moved back," Nora said, "but she was smiling. I didn't like her smile." The inside of the house was better than the outside suggested. Dusty and heavy with the smell of closed rooms and old wood, but structurally sound. The furniture had been left, most of it sheeted in white drop cloths that hunched in the corners, like strange sleeping things. The furnace in the basement worked. The electricity, though Marcus wanted to look more closely at the wiring before we ran anything major, seemed functional. We settled in a room at the far end of the upper hall, the only one without furniture. It had ugly wallpaper, a deep mustard yellow covered in a faded repeating pattern that I immediately hated, but Marcus promised he'd deal with it once we were more settled. That night, we put Nora to sleep between us on the air mattress we'd packed and lay in the dark, listening to the house breathe and settle around us. After a while, Marcus spoke, his voice low and a little blurred with sleep. "You know something strange? When we almost got hit by that truck, that night you told me about the pregnancy, I had a dream while I was drifted off. I don't remember much of it. Bright lights and 2 words. Harrow's Landing." He paused. "And a woman dressed in white." I lay very still. "Why didn't you ever tell me that?" "Seemed like nothing," he said, "until now." He fell asleep not long after. I lay awake much longer. When I did finally sleep, I dreamed I was standing in our room, watching the 3 of us on the air mattress from across the room, the way you sometimes do in dreams, seeing yourself from outside. The walls were different. In place of the yellowed wallpaper, they were covered in symbols, carved or painted in every available inch, and they glowed with a cold, blue-white light, like bioluminescence, like something alive. A thin mist began to seep in from nowhere, spreading low across the floor. On the mattress, Nora sat up. She was looking directly at me, though I wasn't sure she could see me the way you normally see someone. Her eyes reflected the light from the walls. Slowly, she raised her hand and pointed toward the doorway behind me. I turned. The door was open. I was certain I'd closed it. From the darkness of the hallway, 2 eyes were watching me, red and hungry, and very, very old. As I watched, a shape collected itself around those eyes. A woman, or the shape of a woman, dressed entirely in white. Her mouth opened into a smile that had nothing to do with warmth or humor. She began to move toward me, slowly, without any sound at all. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, could only watch as she came closer, closer, her eyes never leaving mine, the smile never changing. And then she stopped. I felt Nora beside me, though I hadn't seen her move. My daughter stood with one hand raised, palm out, her face perfectly calm. The woman in white strained forward, and for a moment I thought whatever was holding her wouldn't be enough. And then Nora raised her other hand, pushed at the empty air between them, and the woman flew backward through the doorway, as if yanked by something invisible. The door slammed shut. I woke with my heart pounding so hard I could hear it. The wallpaper was still ugly. The door was still closed. Marcus and Nora were both asleep beside me. Nora's hand found mine in the dark. The next day, we started trying to make the house livable. Marcus took his tools to the basement. I worked through the main floor, pulling sheets off furniture, wiping down surfaces, letting the rooms breathe. In the afternoon, I bundled Nora up and took her outside to work on the overgrown front path. From where I was kneeling, I could see her sitting on the porch steps, her stuffed rabbit in her lap. I watched her for a while and noticed that every so often she would turn her head as if responding to something just to her left, something I couldn't see or hear. And then her lips would move, very slightly. I was about to call to her when a voice came from behind me. "She's lovely." I startled badly. I turned to find a woman standing just outside the gate, older, perhaps late 60s, with dark hair shot through with silver worn loose past her shoulders. She was dressed in a long coat against the cold, her hands in her pockets, her expression serious but not unfriendly. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to frighten you. I live down the block. I've been here for years. I saw your car this morning and thought I should come introduce myself. I'm Vera Ashwood." "Elena," I said, "my husband Marcus is the new caretaker. Would you like to come in, Ms. Ashwood?" Something shifted in her expression. "No," she said quietly but firmly. "I wouldn't set foot in that house if you paid me." I stared at her. "I'm sorry?" She took a small step forward, close to the gate, but not through it. "Listen to me before you decide I'm just a strange old woman and ignore everything I say. I want you to take your family and leave this town today. Right now, if you can manage it. I'm not speaking lightly, and I'm not exaggerating. Every hour you spend in that house puts your daughter at greater risk than the hour before." I opened my mouth, but she held up a hand. "I know you won't do it. You've nowhere to go, and you don't know me, and nothing bad has happened yet. So I won't insist. But I need you to accept two things from me. First, I have certain abilities. I know that sounds ridiculous, but unusual experiences with this house have left me sensitive to things I can't fully explain. If you're in trouble, if you're frightened, I need you to think of me deliberately and clearly. I know that sounds like nothing, but it's not." She reached into her coat pocket and held out a folded piece of paper. "Second, when you get out of here, and I do mean when, not if, you'll need somewhere to go. On that paper is a name and an address. The person there won't know you or me. Show him what's on the other side of the page. He'll help you." I took the paper. My hand, I noticed, was not entirely steady. Vera's eyes moved past me to Nora, who had gone still on the porch steps and was watching us with full attention. "Hello, little one," Vera said softly, her voice changing. She crouched slightly, just enough to put herself closer to Nora's level. Something passed between them that I couldn't quite identify, a moment of recognition that seemed to go both ways. "Be seeing you," Vera said to me, straightening. "Think of me when there's trouble, and keep that paper somewhere you won't lose it." I watched her walk back down the block and enter a small house near the end of the street. Then I turned back to the front path. "Mommy," Nora said quietly. She'd come off the steps and was standing a few feet away. "She's safe." "Miss Ashwood?" "Yes." She hesitated. "The man inside doesn't like her." "What man, sweetheart?" A brief flash of something crossed her face. "Never mind. Were you talking to someone earlier? On the steps?" She rolled her eyes the way only a 6-year-old can roll their eyes. "That's different. That was Leo." "And who is Leo?" "My friend." "An imaginary friend?" She looked at me with an expression of profound, patient tolerance. "He's not imaginary, Mommy. He just doesn't have a body right now." Later that afternoon, Marcus came down from the attic carrying a small leather journal he'd found lying on the floor up there. He said the roof looked better than expected. The attic was full of old things. A mirror with a tarnished frame, boxes of paper, a collection of dolls arranged on shelving as if they'd been placed there deliberately. He'd grabbed the journal because it had seemed out of place, just sitting there in the middle of the floor with no dust on it. The name on the cover was Thomas Hallow. "Locals call this place the Hallow House," Marcus said, looking at it. "I think this belonged to whoever built it." I flipped through a few pages. Dense, cramped handwriting. Dates going back over a century, words I didn't recognize. Not a language I knew, not fully, though some of the terms were Latin. Others I couldn't place at all. I looked up at Marcus. "I need to tell you something." I told him what Vera had said. The warning, the offer, the paper. I told him about the dreams. I told him that I was frightened, not of anything I could name precisely, but in the way your body knows something before your mind does. "The house felt wrong," I said. "Wrong in the way that certain silences are wrong." Marcus took me in his arms, the way he always did when I was scared of something I couldn't explain. He told me the house was old and creepy, and that was normal for an old, creepy house. He told me he was going to fix it up, and I'd see it differently once it didn't feel so abandoned. He told me we'd run out of options, and we both knew it, but that this was manageable. He was right that we run out of options. He was wrong about the rest. I kissed him before we went to bed. I remember thinking it was a good kiss. I didn't know then it was the last one that was really him. The second night, I fell into a deep and dreamless sleep and woke up in the small hours to the sound of scraping. Nora was awake beside me, her hands locked around my arm in a grip that left marks. Her breathing was fast and quiet. Marcus's side of the mattress was empty. I looked toward the sound. Marcus was standing at the far wall, running a utility knife along the seam of the wallpaper, peeling it back in long strips. He'd already removed a large section, and what was beneath it stopped my breath. The same symbols from my dream, from the walls in the dream version of this room, glowing with that cold, pale light, the real ones, in the real walls. "Marcus," I said carefully, "what are you doing?" He turned slowly. The way he moved was wrong. Not wrong like injury. Wrong like something else was operating the controls and hadn't quite mastered all the nuances yet. "Just getting started on that wallpaper," he said. His voice was Marcus's voice, but the temperature behind it wasn't. "Mommy," Nora said, so quietly I almost missed it. "That's not Daddy." The thing wearing Marcus's face smiled, and I understood immediately, in the way that certain knowledge bypasses thought and lands directly in your chest, that Nora was right. "Well," it said pleasantly, "you are a bright little thing, aren't you?" It looked at Nora in a way that made my skin crawl, and then it looked at me, and the pleasantness dropped. "You should go back to sleep." "Where is my husband?" My voice came out flat and cold and somehow steady. "Oh, he's having a wonderful time," it said, in a tone that made the words horrible. "He's being well looked after. You don't need to worry about him at all." "Leo will help us," Nora whispered against my side. "I asked him already." The thing's expression flickered. For just a moment, something crossed its face that looked almost like irritation. Not directed at us, but inward, at something it was fighting. That useless little, it started, and then seemed to catch itself. It took a step toward us. I got up. I grabbed Nora and pressed her behind me and back toward the wall. "You're going to want to stay where you are," I said. My hands were shaking. My voice wasn't quite. It laughed and took another step. And then something happened that I still don't have proper words for. The thing stopped mid-step. Its expression went through several changes in rapid succession. Rage, confusion, resistance, and then something that was almost surprise. When it spoke again, the voice was different in a way I felt more than heard. "I'm sorry," it said, and I believed it. Believed it immediately, the way you believe someone when a certain quality comes into their voice. "I don't have long. There's a woman down the street," The one who came to the gate. She's real. She can help you. You need to think of her, right now, as clearly as you can. Leo, Nora said. Hi, it said softly, and then it said, louder, fighting something. Think of her now, please. I thought of Vera Ashwood. I thought of her as hard as I've ever thought of anything in my life. I don't know exactly how long it took. Long enough that I had started to believe nothing was going to happen. Long enough that the other thing, the one that called itself something I won't repeat here, had started to reassert control and had Marcus's hand around my throat, and I was clawing at it uselessly in the dark. Then the bedroom door opened. Vera was there. She was dressed in her coat, moving fast. She had a small spray bottle in her hand, and she put it directly into the face of the thing wearing my husband, and whatever was in it burned. I heard it burn, the sound of it, and the grip on my throat released, and I went down. What followed happened fast and was not pleasant to witness. Vera was not what she appeared. The woman who'd crouched gently to speak to my daughter at the gate moved through that room like she'd been doing violence longer than I'd been alive. When it was over, the body that had been Marcus was on the floor, and Vera was hauling me upright. Can you walk? Yes. Then we walk. Right now. Get Nora. I can't just leave him. Sarah. She stopped and looked at me directly, and the absolute absence of any softness in her expression told me everything. What you see on that floor is not your husband. What I can tell you is that the fact that Leo was able to surface means Marcus is still in there somewhere. There is something worth hoping for. But hope doesn't help you tonight. Tonight you need to go. Mommy, Nora said, taking my hand. Daddy says go. I can hear him. He says go, right now. We went. The stairs were dangerous, and we picked our way down them carefully in the dark, and I had just reached the bottom when something heavy tumbled down behind us. I looked up to see the shape on the stairs. Not Vera, but what had been Marcus, the thing back in control. It looked at me from the wreckage of the broken steps, its expression one of pure malice, and then it looked at Nora, and for a moment something shifted. Leo, I thought. It was Leo, buying us seconds. And the eyes went wide and pained, and the body drove itself deliberately into the shattered wood of the broken staircase, using the jagged edges as a weapon against itself. I will not describe what happened after that. I will only say that it made a certain horrible sense, and that I understood Leo was choosing this, and that it was costing him something enormous. Now, Vera said from behind me. Her voice was strained. She'd been hurt. Get your coat. Get your keys. Get out. I found my coat in the kitchen. I found my keys and the paper she'd given me in the pocket. We got out. The fog was rolling in thick and low and wrong. Not weather fog, but something else. Something deliberate. We made it to the gate. Vera was limping badly by the time we got there, and once we were through the gate, she sat down heavily on the curb. You need help, I said. I'll manage. She looked up at me. I've managed before. What is it? What's in that house? A very old thing, wearing many faces. She's been here a long time and she collects people. Takes what's useful from them and discards the rest. She paused. The reason she wants your daughter is the same reason I needed you to leave the day you arrived. Nora has a quality that thing covets. Has been coveting, I suspect, for longer than you know. The dream you had, the changes you felt, none of that was accidental. What do you mean? She looked at me steadily. Your children don't arrive the way other children do, Sarah. They arrive as answers to questions you don't know are being asked yet. Keep her safe. Whatever else you do or don't do, keep her safe. What about Marcus? She was quiet for a moment. I've seen that thing take people all the way, and I've seen them come back from it. Partially, imperfectly, but back. It depends on what they're holding on to. Leo managed to surface tonight, which means there's something in Marcus still worth fighting for. She looked at Nora. I'd suggest giving him a reason. She pressed something into my hand. A second piece of paper. This one had an address and a name. A man called Daniel Mercer on Hallow Road in a city 3 states away. He won't know who I am or who you are, Vera said. Show him what's on the other side. He'll understand. I strapped Nora into her seat. When I came around to the driver's door, Vera was standing there. One more thing, she said, low and private. Your daughter held back something tonight that most adults couldn't hold back. She doesn't fully understand what she can do yet. But she will. And when she does, she's going to need someone around who isn't afraid of it. She stepped back. Don't be afraid of it. I pulled away from the house on Ashford Road. In the rearview mirror, I watched the fog close in behind us, swallowing the iron gate and the pale old house in Vera Ashwood one by one until there was nothing left but road. I drove. Mommy, Nora said from the back seat. Her voice was quiet and very tired. Yeah, baby? Daddy was really there. At the end, I heard him. I know, I said. I believe you. He said he's going to try to come back. I kept my eyes on the road. Then we'll be somewhere he can find us. She didn't say anything after that. I drove through the dark with the piece of paper on the seat beside me and my daughter asleep in the back, and the name Daniel Mercer turning over and over in my mind like a stone in moving water. I held on to the only two things I had, a direction, and the smallest, most stubborn sliver of hope.